Well, I completely see where you're coming from. And I really, I've thought probably similar things myself as well. And well, so one thing you said was, even after you receive, even after, Shinjin is settled, you're still a Bombu, an unenlightened person, right? And that is true. So, uh, settling Shinjin, receiving Shinjin, awakening to Shinjin is not the same as becoming a Buddha, right? Um, so in that sense, yes, we still have to, struggle, struggle through and muddle through our, daily existence as an unenlightened being, right? Clouded by Shinran Shonin says that even though the sky of Shinjin is, you know, uh, basically clear without clouds, the sun is shining, um, it's constantly being clouded over by, our blind passions, right? But then he says that behind the clouds, the sun is shining. So being, it's a question of, well, speaking for myself, I'm going to be, because I know that I'm an unenlightened being, and I know that I can't achieve enlightenment through practicing, Zen meditation, for example. Sure, I could get some benefit from that on some level, right? But my, cravings, and so on are they never, it's a bottomless thing. It's like bailing out a boat that has a hole in it, right? You can sit and sit and sit, but at the end of the day, you're still going to be an unenlightened, ordinary being, right? So, speaking personally, even at the end of the day, since I'm constantly being clouded, the sky is always cloudy with the weather forecast for me is, cloudy with a chance of blind passions. That's the reality that I'm facing, right, as a human being. Um, so is it better to just sit in the rain in the dark, or is it better to know that you are being shown upon by the sun, by the light of, wisdom, that you are being embraced by Amida's, light, which is his compassion and wisdom, right? Unconditionally. There's nothing you have to do to, That's a big difference with what you were saying about Lotus Sutra in Nichiren Buddhism is you do have to practice. Yes, there are those benefits, but it's incumbent on you to practice, and to the extent that you practice, you get those benefits, right? But Amida's light is not like that. We don't have to practice to be shown on by Amida's light. So Amida's light, like Shinran says, my reality is that the sky is always being clouded over by my, blind passions. But beyond that reality, in the midst of that reality, I should say, the light is constantly shining. It's like the passage we read last week from Genshin, Master Genshin, the sixth of the seven masters of Jodo Shinshu, said, my eyes are constantly being clouded by blind passions, and I can't see the light. So that's quite a pickle to be in. You know. I mean, but then he goes on and says, but the great compassion of the Buddha, of Amida Buddha, is constantly, untiringly working to embrace me. So, you know, for me personally, I would say that the since I'm going to be an unenlightened being at the end of the day, beset by all of these cravings, you know, and sure, you know, maybe if you practice meditation every day, some things might be helpful for you, right? Like you be less anxious, or you might find some benefit, right? But can I become a fully enlightened Buddha, liberated being, someone who, like Shakyamuni did, could completely, you know, cut off all of his kleshas and, you know, resolve every problem? I don't think so. You know, at the end of the day, no matter how many hours of meditation I do, or how many times I chant, you know, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, I'm still going to be an ordinary, unenlightened being. So, you know, that being the case, we have in Jodo Shinshu, you know, the realization that the Buddha's light is not something that we can like earn or get through practicing, whatever practice that may be, you know. It's not even that we say the nimbutsu in order to be, you know, shown on by Amida's light. It's that Amida's light is already being given to all beings constantly. So in Jodo Shinshu, it's really, you know, hearing the vow and the working of Amida's vow, and kind of entering that, you know, world of the working of Amida's vow through, you know, hearing the Dharma and through. And one thing I would say too, though, is, I mean, so because in Jodo Shinshu, you know, well, how to put this, you know, Shinjin is kind of sometimes presented as like an all or nothing thing, like a pivotal one moment where it's all settled kind of thing. And especially in sort of more fringe Shinshu groups, that the conversation tends to go in those directions. But it's really more of a process. I mean, it's not something that necessarily happens all in a moment. You know, it's not it's something that it's a journey. And I would say an important part of that, you know, process is, you know, saying the nimbutsu. You know, Shinran says that Shinjin doesn't exist apart from, you know, Namo Amida Butsu. So it's not that we say the nimbutsu in order to get Shinjin, because there's nothing we can do that can, like, you know, make the sun shine, right? But like Kobai Sensei said, you know, even if you don't have like the same level of, you know, the gratitude that a person, like you mentioned, you know, you see people who have Shinjin, who are people of Shinjin, and, you know, and it is true, when you see those people, you think, wow, the nimbutsu that person is saying is really like coming from a place of assurance and not having doubt and just being, you know, just constantly in the light of Amida, right? but even if the nimbutsu that you and I say, or that anyone says, is not, there yet, like Kobai Sensei said, it still nourishes us spiritually. It's not like it's not a good thing to say the nimbutsu. But a problem arises when you start saying the nimbutsu like
Sorry,
yeah.
I had to.
Oh no, no problem.
My cat was being
sorry.
very...
I'm going on a bit too long here. I should
No,
stop
please,
and let you comment.
No, not at all, not at all. My cat was being very insistent. I think she wants to hear the Dharma. She wanted to come in the room.
Hello there.
Anyway.
What's her name?
It's Tessie. So
okay.
She's heard lots of the Dharma over the years, and I've talked to her about the Dharma lots over the years. So anyway,
good. She's one
13,
lucky
all her life, basically, in one form or another. She's heard many nimbutsus. Okay, and I've talked to her about the Dharma. Anyway,
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah.
Well, there's a great passage in the larger sutra that says, Amida's light like shines on every living creature, like even the insects and the bugs and the, it's benefiting everybody, right? So not just human beings. I was just saying the problem arises when in Jodo Shinshu when you start using the nimbutsu. And what I mean by using the nimbutsu is like using it as a tool or as a practice to like, get some benefit. Like this is pretty common in a lot of
Yuzu nimbutsu. Yeah, I've heard of that school. There's one temple at least that I know that still exists in that tradition, and it was somebody prior to Honin, even, wasn't it? That it starts with an I. I can't remember his name now, but it starts with an I. The sort of
I think you might be thinking of Ipin Shoni.
I'm not sure. There was somebody before. I think it was before Honin that was a Pure Land,
right,
Buddhist in Japan, but wasn't, and it was that it was Yuzo Nembutsu, and that it was sort of using teachings from another sutra to kind of say that, well, the power of the Nembutsu is not only does it save the individual being, but by that individual being saying the Nembutsu, it has effects on all of like reality, like rippling through all of reality and not only through their own life, but all existence. Basically, it ripples through, and alters things and changes things. That Anyway, is that right? Is that what you were kind of?
Yeah, that would be
and Japanese Pure Land Buddhism that you're kind of. Like I said, there's only, like, as far as I know, there's only one temple that kind of that's part of that lineage that still exists. But yeah,
and that would be a good example of the nimbutsu as a kind of a practice, right? That we do, and then we sort of influence, or our saying the nimbutsu creates this karmic effect and so on, right?
And I have to admit to looking into that very, very intensely, but there's not much out there, unfortunately, on the internet about it. There's not much, find about the how it's taught. And then even I've gone to the website of that temple in Japan, and it's nothing in English there. There's nothing in English really, and there's very scant videos.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I have as a possible a hope of this is something that combines the best of both worlds. But no,
right.
It doesn't really. There's just not much there to learn. It's just there's just not that a non could utilize. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, well, that would be an example of for the Yuzu Nimbutsu school, of course, that's a legitimate school, right, of Buddhism. So if you studied that school and thought, this is it, I agree with this makes sense to me, and this is the path for me, then great, But I have to say, I'm just speaking from, the Jodo Shinshu perspective. So, from the point of view of Jodo Shinshu doctrine, right? We don't really, for example, we don't put an emphasis on the number of nimbutsu, say nimbutsu so many times a day, for example, and that kind of thing, right? So schools that do that, have a different approach to the nimbutsu. And actually, I mean, what you said about Tendai and the fact that Amida was a part of Tendai as well, right? I mean, Honin, Chonin, and in fact, the practice that Shinran Shonin did on Mount Hiei in Rakuji, the temple on Mount Hiei. I have to tell you a story. I climbed Mount Hiei.
Oh, did you? Wow, cool.
When I was living in Kyoto.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. There was a friend I met at Nishi Honganji when I would attend the morning service there. And this gentleman had to be in his 70s, I would say mid to late 70s. But he was just totally as, healthy as, I mean, the Japanese, they lived pretty healthy.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. And especially the older, the elderly people who still have a really healthy diet, eating lots of fish every day and that kind of thing. But anyway, he invited
genetic and karmic stock, I would say, Japanese people. Very, very extremely healthy genetically and karmically, it seems like.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway, so he invited me and another friend to basically be our guide and climb Mount Hiei. And so we did. And it was really, amazing. You're in the middle of the forest. You're going up sometimes like incredibly steep trail. And he was just, taken off, man. I was like panting and sweating. And he was just, going up the... And we got to the top, and there's a temple there. It's the same temple, not the same buildings, but it's the in Rakuji, the same Tendai, the head of the Tendai sect, right? And so we worshipped at some of the temples, and then took the bus back to Kyoto. But that was a really amazing experience. Anyway, I said all that to say,
I'll say.
Yeah. There's a monument, of course, to Shinran Shonin and also to Honin Shonin. And so we visited those, spots where Honin Shonin and Shinran Shonin both, practiced and lived on Mount Hiei. But, some of the lectures that I heard when I was at Chuo Bukkyo Gakuin says that the practice, what we actually know, or we have a pretty good idea, like what practice Shinran Shonin was doing when he was, on Mount Hiei. And it's based on the smaller sutra, the Amida Sutra. And it's the part where I don't have it open, so if I misquote this, that would be a problem. But basically, Shakyamuni says, hold fast to the name for 1 to 7 days.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what they do. Well, first of all, in the middle of this hall, there's a big statue image of Amida Buddha. And it would have been, very gold, ornate, beautiful statue. If you go to Japanese Jodo Shinshu temple, you'll see a similar, not usually that big, but a statue of Amida. And they basically would walk around the statue of Amida So it was a walking meditation or a walking practice. And as they walked around and around and around, they would just say the nimbutsu constantly without stopping. So it starts to become, it's not like Namo Amida Butsu, it just starts to become Namandama, 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 Namandama. It's like, saying it without any pause, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if they actually go without food and drink for the entire time, the entire 7 days. I want to say, I don't exactly remember. Unfortunately, I don't entirely remember, but I want to say that there was some sort of provision where they would basically like fill their mouth with water at a certain point, without like breaking the practice too much. Because I don't know if an ordinary human being can survive for 7 days without water. It might be. But the point is, this would be a very difficult practice for you and me.
Yes. This is not a practice for ordinary humans. This is not a practice for ordinary beings, for ordinary, everyday human beings. Yeah. Definitely not.
And the goal, so you might ask, like, what's the point, right, of this practice? The goal is to, at the end of the 7 days, if the practice is effective, right, you would have a, well, I don't want to say a vision, but I mean, basically Amida would appear to you. You would visualize Amida in your mind, right? So the goal of this practice was actually to visualize Amida, like it says in the smaller sutra. But Shinran Shonin, even doing that practice,
was not.
He didn't arrive. We don't know whether he was able to visualize Amida or not. But even with doing that practice, he was not able to reach a point where he felt that he was, saved or yes, I'm going to the Pure Land. And he didn't come to a point where, and the reason is because at the end of the day, that practice is essentially a practice that you have to do by your own power. Like, I can't speak for you, but I know for me, if I like sat and tried to say the nimbutsu for an hour nonstop, I mean, after the first 5 minutes, I'd be like, well, this is going on for a long time. And, let alone going without food for 7 days, saying the nimbutsu constantly, right? That's going to change your mind, right? It has an effect. Like you mentioned, people who chant, in the Lotus Sutra, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, right? Chanting that long over and over, I mean, that affects your mind, right? And that's the point of the practice, right? Is to create, is to affect your get enlightenment, and affect your mind, and ultimately have that vision of Amida Buddha, right? But even with all of that, Shinran Shonin, he did that practice, and he still left the mountain.
Probably all the other, he probably did. From what I gather, he did all the Tendai practices, and probably did all the different roles that you could do in the temple for 20 years, and that's I tend to forget that. Like, and then he even, doing that and being the person that he was, it didn't change anything. Basically, for him, it didn't change his emotions, didn't change his own mind. It didn't do anything. And then I think and then when I remember that, I just laugh, thinking that I even think, well, maybe I could, if I in my like puny capacity, be able to do I might be able to do the Lotus Sutra practices. I might be able to do the Nichiren Buddhist practices. Do you know what I mean? Like, or the Tendai practices. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. I should have prefaced this whole thing by saying,
Mm.
these are the questions and the doubts I have. But I have made a decision that I am going to be, I have literally made a decision. And I don't know if I mentioned this in our talks before.
I think you might have.
That I made a decision that whether I Shinjin or no Shinjin, I'm going to die a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist. Okay.
Wow.
That's the decision I've made. So I still have these doubts.
Yeah.
You see, I have no, by the way, I mean, however that happens in the natural course of things. Okay. Right. I don't have any plans to, hurry that along. That's the decision I made. So I still have these doubts, and they're very strong, and they come. But I've made the decision, no matter what comes into my mind about whatever religion or whatever path of of Buddhism, whether it's the 9 to 5 non-Buddhist ways or the other the provisional Buddhist way, whatever that comes into my mind, however strongly, I'm still going to stick with this path. That's the decision I made. I should have said that earlier, but
you still have doubts, right?
But I mean, I still have these really.
What if I was over there practicing zazen with all those happy people?
Yeah, it's like that. It's another Apocalypse Now reference for me. When he's in the hotel room in the beginning, and when I'm here, I want to be there. When I'm there, I want to be here. And internally, I'm just as a mess as that guy too. But somehow he knows it'd be better if I was over here than anyway. Yeah. It's a loose.
The grass is always greener on the other side, right?
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, but the thing is it's that expression is a good one because it's always greener on the other side. It's not that you get to the other side and it's greener there. No. You get to the other side and then it's greener on the other side. And it's a really deep proverb if you think about it. That's what we think, right?
It's kind of ironic. It's kind of ironic in this context because you, in a weird way, because of having those thoughts, it's greener over here. There's almost a faith that it's. I'm thinking that even though I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a capacity for faith there, for some kind of faith there, that it is that somehow I'll be able to do this over there. But it's really a delusion. Like it's really like. Anyway, I'm complicating things now. Anyway, never mind. Just
that's
Shinran.
That's a tangent.
Sorry.
First of all, I think that's certainly how to say a weighty what would we say, not conviction, but decision that you made to stick purely under bust, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. As Paul Roberts would say, yeah, he used to say, Shinjin, But I don't. When after I made the decision, I was like, that feels very Japanese to me. That kind of, you know what I mean? That kind of
determination,
decision. Yeah.
Yeah. The Japanese are very determined people. There's a proverb in Japanese: fall down 7 times. Get up 8.
Oh, I love it. It's kind of like, it's almost like the what does not kill me makes me stronger. Kind of similar to that kind of Nietzschean sentiment. Anyway, sorry, yeah. Which I always I kind of relate to in a way, but yeah.
And that's why Shinran Shonin says that monks and lay people in this latter days of the Dharma should really take stock of their own ability. That's what he says basically in Kyogyo Shinsho and elsewhere probably as well. He says that the monks and lay people in this era should deeply reflect and take a measure of what they are capable of. And he was speaking from experience, right? He wasn't just saying that. As someone who myself was up on that mountain practicing constantly for 20 years, and I couldn't do it. And it's not that he's saying that nobody can do it or that you can't do it either. If I couldn't do it, then you can't do it. But he's just encouraging people, you've got to take a measure of what you are capable of, right? And I may have mentioned this, but there's a tradition. I don't know if it's written somewhere, if it's a tradition, but basically from the top of Mount Hiei, there's actually a huge lake called Lake Biwa. And really beautiful, deep blue. Seeing it through the trees is just, wow, so refreshing.
Breathtaking, probably.
Yeah, breathtaking. And it said that Shinran Shonin one night was looking out at that lake and he was thinking about, what am I doing here? I haven't reached this, the fruit of this practice. I haven't reached enlightenment. What am I doing here? He looked out at the lake and it was perfectly smooth, like glass. And then he saw the moon reflected in that perfectly smooth lake. And he thought, that lake is so smooth that the moon is reflected in it, but my mind is still in turmoil. It's still, filled with waves and, it's not smooth and, reflecting enlightenment, even though I've been here for 20 years. And that's when he realized, and he actually left. I mean, he left the mountain. Imagine being in one place for 20 years. You have this life, basically. You're living with all of these people who are also on the same path as you. You have your teachers, your seniors, your people who are younger than you, who you're mentoring, right? You have for 20 years, that's a long time. And yet he left and went to find, a new way. And then it ultimately went to Honin Shonin. And it said that, actually, we have this is written by Shinran Shonin's wife, Ishinmi, in one of her letters that she wrote to her daughter. And she said that she wrote that Shinran Shonin went to that good man. She refers to Honin Shonin as that good man, which I think is really kind of cool. What a neat way of referring to Honin, But she says, he went to that good man and listened to his teaching every day for 100 days, rain or shine. Every day for 100 days, he was sitting, listening to Honin Shonin. And then part of, after Honin Shonin would be talking about the Dharma, right? But then there would be question and answer, I mean, people would be expressing their doubts and and we have records of a lot of that. It's written in various books, and Shinran Shonin was doing the same thing. He was asking questions. He was, that's all part of deeply listening, right? Yeah. the process. So, and that was all after he practiced for 20 years on Mount Hiei. So imagine coming down from all that time spent in being like a complete beginner, just sitting at the feet of Honin Shonin. You see where I'm trying to go with this? I mean, so
there's a massive degree of humility there from that deep reflection.
Yeah.
From that deep reflection.
Yes.
That he had on himself. That's something that in Kobai's writings, he emphasizes a lot, that deep reflection that Honin did and the importance of that for realizing what we are, as what we are as bamboo, what we, yeah, so he was, yeah, that's to go from 20 years of that to being a beginner at someone's feet,
Yeah.
there must have been some massive, something very humbling that took place in Shinran's life for him to be able to, anyway, sorry, or something empowering, and something empowering him to do that. Yeah.
Right. So. Well, I think Shinran Chonin really had, I think that he was probably, I mean, even from an early age, I think he just had a real, like, how to put it, like a desire for, the Buddha's path and, enlightenment, and not just for himself, but also for all, beings as well. So it was really, his, like, even after 20 years, and not being able to, he didn't just give up, I mean, what if he had just given up? We wouldn't have, Dodo Shinshu today. No. But, he kept seeking, and he went to Honen Shonin, and, he wrote Kyogyo Shinsho and so many other, hymns and everything to share, what he had found. So, yeah, I mean, it's true that in Jodo Shinshu, I mean, there are texts that talk about, like, the benefits of saying the nimbutsu, right? But it's largely spiritual benefits. It's not, you'll be healed if you say the nimbutsu, or you'll walk on water if you say the nimbutsu, or it's and of course there's the 10 benefits that a person of Shinjin experiences in this present. It's called the 10 benefits in the present life.
Present life, yeah.
Right, but they're all they're all spiritual, essentially. They're not like I'll live for 120 years or something.
And I can definitely see, if I were a person of that diamond-like faith, Shinjin, with zero doubts, zero questions, I can see that those 10 benefits would be like mind-blowing, like that they would be they would be real to that. They would be very real every day.
Yeah.
I can see that. I can definitely see, if I did, and I can see that in people that have, like, I could probably say it's probably around the under 10 people I know. You're one of them that has Shinjin that I really, kind of know or believe have Shinjin. I can see that would be, those things are very, do you know what I mean? Real. They would be very real everyday things. I could see that.
Yeah.
If I was in that, if I had that doubtless, adamantine, diamond-like, one thought moment faith thing. And I know that Shinjin is not like some kind of mystical experience. I know it's not some kind of mind state that you achieve. I know it's nothing like that. But I'm just saying, if I had no doubts and had absolute faith, I could 100%, those 10 benefits would be like very real, and very part of my life. But it just, I don't. Right.
How do you get to that? Yeah. It's
I don't have that. I still have doubts. I still have,
right.
Even though I've come a long way from where I was when I first started to.
Right. So you have, you are moving in a direction where you are you're asking questions, you're doing what Shakyamuni said, which is test my words like gold.
Yes.
You're testing the gold.
Exactly, which feels kind of weird, because, like, as a seeker, like we were talking about with Honan being,
Mm,
I'm not saying I'm at all like Honan Shinran. I'm not saying I'm at all like Shinran,
mm,
but I have been a very sincere seeker all my life of spiritual
mm,
truth, like as far as back as I can remember, even as a kid. Okay,
yeah.
in whatever context of religion that was. Um,
Hmm.
and then eventually I questioned that upbringing, and that was
Mm,
terrifying. It was terrifying,
yeah.
very painful experience to come to break from that and come away from
Yeah.
it and seek out, like, and then be out there with nothing, like be and
Yeah.
trying to reach for truth, and then finding Buddhism.
Yeah.
And I have never been able to, like I have every other 95 non-Buddhist way, I've
Mm,
been able to get to a point where I'm like, okay, it's totally, that's lacking or very lacking, or it's not enough. You know, there's degrees of the nine. For me,
right.
there's degrees of how good the 95 non-Buddhist ways are. But
Yeah.
all,
Some are definitely
here's
better than
Buddhism up
others.
here, and then here's the rest. They start down here. You know, the 95
Yeah.
non ways, and maybe Taoism is at the top of that list. You know,
Right.
and
Right.
and
Yeah.
then other things underneath it. But like it's but the chasm between, and so I got to that point where, but that, even that itself was, you know, getting to that point was and painful and terrifying and confusing,
Mm,
and you know, um and so I know I'm a sincere seeker and inquirer, and I know that
mm,
Buddhism is the true teaching, full stop. There's nothing
yeah.
else. Do you know what I mean? There's just nothing that is even remotely
Yeah. Well,
close to it
I
or passes it.
my
And
go ahead. Go
so,
ahead.
any, you know, when if I do have doubts along those lines, they don't last very long. If I start to think about
Mm,
other paths or other philosophies or other, it doesn't last for, you know, even the
mm.
monkeys can't sustain, even my monkey, even my ridiculous monkey
Yeah.
mind can't sustain that anymore. It's just the light of
Yeah.
Buddhism shines supremely, and I suppose that light is Amida that's shining, you know, for me. But
Yeah.
the so I know I'm a sincere seeker, and I will go to any lengths, and I have so far gone to any lengths to get to the truth. I can't even tell you what it's taken for me to, what it took for me to even get
Mm,
to Buddhism, to get to that
mm,
point of Buddhism and realizing the truth of Buddhism,
mm,
internally, and the cost of that internally and externally, and
mm.
with family, and with, like, it's been a high, there's been a high cost
Yeah.
to that. But anyway, so where were we? So I was bringing that up for a point, that
Well, I think
so
you were saying, you've come this far, and then you don't have doubts about Buddhism
right,
generally, right?
right,
But
yeah,
then
yeah,
you have questions about what path,
within,
since there
yeah,
it says that, it says there's a 95, however many non-Buddhist paths, but then Shakyamuni also taught 84,000
Buddhist
teachings,
paths.
right?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a
Yeah.
lot to look at.
Right. There's so many, and like when Shonin says they all were taught by Shakyamuni, meaning, they all come from the same, teaching, right? So they're all good and they all have benefits. And then Renyo Shonin says, if they're practiced as, per instructed, right?
Yes. And if you have the capacity and the
Yeah.
karmic causes to be able to do that, yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot, there's a lot of ifs there. Pretty major ifs, especially for anybody living in Mappo.
Yeah. I wouldn't put too much emphasis though on the past karmic
Yeah.
thing, because I mean, we did discuss that a little bit. It's like the fact that you're here, listening to Jodo Shinshu. And let me share with you, I mean, you've heard it, I'm sure, many times, but it's always worth where is it? Okay. It's always a great passage that's worth considering or worth reflecting on however many times. Shinran Chonin is writing in he's writing at the beginning of, by the way, when I'm going off screen, am I cutting out? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, no, yeah, I can still hear you. Yeah, it's fine for you
okay,
to,
good.
You can literally just go to other pages and it will automatically just take you off camera.
Oh, okay.
I'll still hear you. So if you just go to other, you just okay. Bring up another page, or if you're on like an iPhone or whatever, that's what happens. It just automatically turns your camera off, but you're still speaking.
Okay. Okay. Hear you can still hear me, right? I saw that my camera was off, and I thought,
yeah.
am I
yeah, it always is. Yeah, it's off. It just puts up your name. It just turns off and shows on the screen, basically. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Let me. So basically, at the beginning of Kyogo Shinsho, there's the preface that Shinran Shonin writes, and in that he says, "This then," and by this he means Jodo Shinshu. This then, and by Jodo Shinshu he means the teaching of the larger sutra, right? This then is the true teaching, easy to practice for small, foolish beings. It is the straight way, easy to traverse for the dull and ignorant. Among all teachings, the great sage, meaning Shakyamuni, preached in his lifetime, none surpasses this ocean of virtues. Let the one who seeks to abandon the defiled and aspire for the pure, who is confused in practice, in vacillating in faith, whose mind is dark and whose understanding deficient, whose evils are heavy and whose karmic obstructions manifold. Let such persons embrace above all the Tathagata's exhortations, take refuge without fail in the most excellent direct path, devote themselves solely to this practice, and revere only this Shinjin. So he's addressing the very kind of person that you and I are, small and foolish beings, confused in practice, confused about practices.
That's what I'm talking about right here. Yeah.
Vacillating in faith, going on and off, and, all around.
But I've been talking about this last
to us, he's talking to you and me. So this, this is the kind of person that Jodo Shinshu is for, right? So I would just say, consider, it's worth reflecting on that passage. I think he's not saying, I mean, he does say, if you attain Shinjin, then you should rejoice, you should be grateful from the conditions and the causes that brought that about. But he's not saying like it's in a fatalistic way, it's not like it's, that's why he says, I mean, if you are this kind of person, confused about practices, vacillating in faith, then hear and, you should hear and accept this. Says that not even all the other.
I think you're Gabriel. I think
yes.
You're holding on to your microphone. I think you're you're covering. You're just now. Just
sorry about that.
5 minutes. I think you started to the way you're holding it is covering the mic. So anyway, sorry, Kyokan.
Yes, you're right. What did you hear? Where was I?
I heard everything. I heard everything. I heard
okay.
Just it was just slightly muffled, and
gotcha.
It was starting to get to a point where it's real. I'm not. That's why.
And I did have I was holding my phone from like the bottom, So
that's exactly what I mean. I've done that too. Myself. So, no worries.
Yeah. But so that, I mean, I think it's worth reflecting on. I mean, maybe even as a part of like listening, or when you're thinking about Jodo Shinshu, like sometimes just reading the preface to Kyogyo Shinsho is like really good, because it's kind of all,
it's all there.
Like, yeah, it's kind of like Shinran Shonin's manifesto in a sense.
Yeah, and it's kind of like we were talking about last time. Was it last time, or was it two times ago? Sorry, two sessions ago. This is for you. This is it kind of harkens of that. Yes. Because everything he's describing is my mind state, is the state of my life. Right. He's saying this is for you. He's kind of the same thing. No, it's literally for you. Literally.
Right. It's for you and me, and it's for every, people who are confused and burdened with, blinded by passions and kleshas and obstacles, and that's why it's the unhindered light. It's called unhindered because Amida's light is not, our bonno, our blind passions, is no obstacle, for Amida's light. So I think we've probably been going for about an hour. We didn't get to some of the topics I had, but we'll get to those. Let's we'll talk about those next time.
I think it was important. This one this was a huge part of what's always underneath there. This is one of the big ones. This, what we talked about today, is one of the big questioned out issues, or blockages, or you know what I mean. Yeah. Of the channels of faith, as it were, for me anyway. Huge. That's a big one. And when I think about, like, when I have these conversations and then I reflect, we talk about Shinran and Shinran's experience and who he was and what he went through, and that like that he couldn't do it. Like, wow. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do I think? Like, I suddenly realized like how ridiculous it is for me to even think, oh yeah, I could do these other practices. But at the time when it comes on, I can't shake it. I just, when I'm able to deeply reflect, I'm like, okay, I'm ridiculous. This is, have these conversations to connect with somebody who, a friend on the path who has Shinjin, and do you know what I mean? And I can actually see how ridiculous my thinking is, that,
well,
like,
but it's probably not.
I doubt myself a lot more than I doubt the Dharma. I question and doubt myself. You know what I mean? I doubt myself.
No, I can see that. What you're saying, your question is like, not that you're not doubting that Jodo Shinshu is a valid path. You're questioning, like, can I really, get Shinjin? Can I actually do this path, or should I look to some other path?
But the part that is ridiculous is where should I look to some other path? Like, I could actually do some other path of Buddhism. Like, that's what's, you know what I mean? Even though the teachings around the Lotus Sutra are that they're for this, they are for Mappo as well, and that they're for, that sort of the you're relying on, you're not relying on your egoic mind, you're relying on the sutra itself, you're relying on your Buddha mind, you're relying on, you're not really relying on yourself at all, really, to do this. I mean, you are and you aren't. It's anyway, but the other thing is, it talks about the bodhisattvas of the earth are the ones that are meant to uphold, practice, this sutra. Like, so do I think I'm a bodhisattva of the earth, or do I even think I'm one of their retinue? Like, is that, do you know what I mean? Then I realize in those, after I have a conversation with her, if I deeply reflect, how ridiculous it is that I think I could do that. Do you see what I mean? Anyway.
Yeah. Well, and it's probably, I would say it's probably not a doubt or a question that will just magically go away after one, Zoom session.
No, it's very tenacious. It is. Yeah. Stayed with me a long time. So.
Yeah. Well, I definitely am looking forward to future conversations because I have some topics that I think address some of your past questions, and then also some other. I think we could really maybe kind of dig into like how the hows and the whys of Shinjin and Nimbutsu, and what is Shinran's system in thought
Yeah.
on all of this. And then I also have some resources that I would like to recommend to you as well. And I might introduce them to you, and then I'll share the link maybe in our next session as well. So some reliable.
There was something you were going to send from one of our other sessions that I can't remember.
Yeah, I remembered that, and I actually remembered that. I realized I never sent it to you. I think
okay, you didn't, because I was like, maybe he did send it, and I have to scroll back.
Sorry, yeah,
in our messenger conversation to find it. But
no.
Okay,
yeah, I forgot and didn't send it. I think it was what attitude we should have when we're listening to the Dharma. Yeah, I'll send that to you as well. But yeah, looking forward to talking to you again. Hopefully, these conversations are helpful. I mean,
hugely. You have no idea. Yeah, it's hard for me to convey how helpful they are. So it's definitely good to have this to come to every week or back to every or however often we can do it. It helps bring me right back. It's a struggle between me and the planet of the apes in my mind. It's me and all those monkeys. It's a whole planet.
Yeah,
planet the apes. I'm telling you. And you got the science ministry fighting me. You got the gorilla. You got the arm, militaristic arm of the monkeys. You've got each faction.
Yeah. So I love that analogy.
It's a good one. It's such a good one. Anyways, so yeah. So thank you very much. They've extremely helped.
My pleasure. And let's definitely meet again. I don't know if I'll be able to meet next Sunday, but I will message you and let you know. And I think next weekend should be fine. So.
All right.
And then we can discuss some of those topics. And then I think we should have a policy, though, like we did today, of whatever the most pressing issue is, or whatever question you have. I think we should address that first. And, whether or not I can address it adequately is one, question. But if not, then we can always ask Kobai Sensei. But I think that we should always address like the most pressing issue first, and then kind of, if we have time, move on to other topics and so on. So
completely agree, and I'll do that. I generally have kind of done that in our talk so far. We'll keep doing that, and then you could even bring something for next time if you think of.
I have some topics and ideas
we talked about this time. Bring it and go. Yeah, here. This is what.
Right. I probably will, because I tend to think about things afterward, and then I kind of come up with ideas. So I certainly will as well. We can definitely do that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kyokan. I really appreciate it.
Yes, you're welcome. It's my pleasure, and I'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu. See ya. Take care.